supposed to put money in the meat as well.
So, good evening, everybody. There's a story of Rabbi Seligman, who has a nice big shul, and one night, very stormy night, thunder strikes the shul, a massive hole in the roof, water coming in, and the whole place is pretty much destroyed. And the next day it was on the news, and the media was there, and they interviewed the rabbi and said, "Rabbi, what do you say about what happened?" So he said, "Well, thank God we took out insurance against acts of God, so we're covered. We're covered for this. We know that we may have faith, but you've got to sometimes cover yourself as well. Faith is a big struggle, a big question, and one that the Jewish religion embraces the struggle of it. What indeed is faith? Can you have God? Can you have Judaism without God? What if somebody struggles with the idea of God? Can you embrace Judaism without embracing God? And what do you do about it if that is your question, that is your struggle? So we're going to look at this question, the question of God, and what we believe, and what we believe believing is, what indeed belief means, by looking at our sources and examining it from a very real and interesting perspective. And the way we're going to start is by looking at the very name of the Jewish people, Israel. We mentioned last week that we are called the children of Israel, and that is because our patriarch, our forefather Jacob, his name was changed to Israel. What does the name Israel mean? What does the word Israel actually translate to? So if you look at Genesis chapter 32, this is the verse that describes the moment that Jacob became Israel, and the name Israel became a part of our identity. It was after Jacob, our forefather, had been traveling, and he was attacked by what seemed to be a man and ended up being an angel with whom he wrestled all night. He won the wrestle. He got injured in his thigh, had a limp, but he won the wrestle. And at the end, the angel revealed himself as an angel and blessed him and said that, "I'm changing your name." And this is the verse: "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel." Your name is now Israel. Why? Because you have wrestled with God and with men and prevailed. That's why your name is Israel, because you've wrestled with God and with men and you have prevailed. You won. So now your name is Israel. Now this is an example of how things get lost in translation. Reading the English of that verse doesn't make any sense. You're called Israel. Why? Because you wrestled with God and with men and prevailed. Well, what's the connection? Where's Israel in that? Why would that be a connection? So let's for a moment assume you know no Hebrew, because in the Hebrew it does make sense. But assuming you know no Hebrew and have no background and know nothing about this except for what you've just read, what would your assumption be what Israel must mean? If reading this, your name is not Jacob, it's Israel. Now why? Because you have wrestled with God and with men and prevailed. So the word Israel must mean struggle or perseverance. Any other? Victory. Again, why are we calling you Israel, says the angel? Because you have wrestled with God and men and prevailed. So if somebody has just had a wrestle and they won, what do you call them? The winner. You would call them the winner, the victor. So Victor would be a nice name. We call your name's not Jacob, it's Victor, and the children of Victor forever and ever. That's what would make a lot of sense. But here we're assuming, well, Israel. What does it mean? The victor, the one who prevailed, the one who won. So no, in the Hebrew, it is not that. If you look at the Hebrew, the words are, because you have wrestled with God, ki sarita, the verb sarita, which in Hebrew are the letters sin, resh, and aleph, the core of Israel, that is the name. The name is the one who wrestled. And the aleph lamed, the el at the end, is God's name, the one who wrestles with God. Which is quite surprising, because it's not the victor, it's the wrestler, it's the struggler, it's the one that is in a battle. That seems strange. Now, some have suggested that if you look at the Hebrew word for and you prevailed, it's tuchal. Tuchal means you have prevailed. You won the battle. Some have suggested that would not be a very poetic name, tuchal. It doesn't have such a ring to it. The children of Tuchal, the land of Tuchal. That doesn't sound good. Sounds a bit weird. But of course, just that alone wouldn't render it not the name, if that's what it's meant. If the purpose here is that you won the battle, call it the winner, the victor. And yet, we're not called that. We're called the one who struggles, who wrestles with God. That is the name Israel. I think that is extremely significant, that the very name of our people, of our land, of our history, of our identity, of each one of us, is the one who struggles with God. And this introduces a completely different view of what faith is from a Jewish perspective. In most religious beliefs, faith is like an on or off switch. You've either got it or you don't have it. You can answer. So you're a believer or you're not a believer. The answer is either yes, I'm a believer, or no, I'm a non-believer. It's pretty much either you're in or you're out. And one who has faith is a part of that faith, and if you don't have the faith, so then you're not of the faith. That's how it's usually worded. The Jewish view is different. The Jewish view is that we are the people who struggle with God. That faith is a conversation. It's a debate. It's a struggle. It's a relationship. It develops. It has ups and downs. You're in sometimes more and sometimes less. It is an ongoing battle, a wrestle, as opposed to an acceptance that we just take upon ourselves. We're in, and that's it. It is an ongoing battle. I remember many years ago, I was on a university campus in America, and I was a missionary, a Christian missionary, came up to me and said, "Can I have a chat with you? Can I ask you some questions?" And I knew that he was a missionary, and I knew that when a missionary wants to ask you questions, it's not just an interview, or they're interested, they're trying to get across something. But I was willing to have a little chat. Why not? I said, "Sure, you're welcome to ask me. What would you like to ask me?" So he said, "My first question is, I assume that being Jewish, you believe that Judaism is the truth. So if that's the case, why is it that most people in the world don't believe in Judaism?" So I said, well, if you can imagine parents with several children, so the way you treat each child has to be unique according to that child's particular talents and skills and personality. That each child has to be brought up in their own way. One may be musically inclined, one may be more intellectual, one may be sporting. Each one has to be encouraged to develop in their own way. Good parents will not treat all their children the same and give them all the same path. They all have different paths. Each path will lead to their fulfillment, but they're all different paths. So too, God is the parent of all of us, all the nations of the world. And for each nation, he gives them their path and their way that is their way to contribute to the world. For Jews, it's the Jewish way. For others, it's other ways. And that's fine. That's a good parent. He said, "Okay, can I ask you another question?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "By the way, I like that answer. But can I ask you another question?" His second question was, now that we do not have a temple in Jerusalem, there's no temple, and therefore there's no sacrificial service, so how do you attain atonement for your sins without sacrifices? And I knew where he was getting, because in Christian theology, you get atonement through the death of their Savior. And without that, if you haven't got a temple, so then how are you going to get atonement for your sins? How are you get forgiven for your sins? If you believe in him, you get forgiven. But how do you get it without atonement, without sacrifices? So I said to him, well, the sacrificial service was only for very specific sins. It was for accidental sins, unintentional sins. And even then, it had to be accompanied with sincere repentance and remorse. And so it's only a minor part of the sins. That somebody who sins intentionally, does something wrong, they have to fix it. Bringing a sacrifice doesn't help. You have to actually internally transform yourself and regret what you've done. And so the fact we haven't got a temple doesn't stop that. That is the real service that you have to do still today. I said, okay. Third question. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the weakest and 10 being the most passionate, where would you rate your faith in God? And I assume what he was trying to do was to try and find that maybe I wasn't 100% sure about my faith in God. And that little weakness, if I'm not 100% sure, so then maybe there's somewhere where he could get into. So I answered him that my faith in God varies from 0 to 10, not 1 to 10, but 0 to 10. Sometimes I feel 0, I feel nothing. And sometimes I feel fully connected and my faith is 100% there. That I fluctuate because I'm a human being. I'm a body and a soul. I have distractions. I have things that block, and I don't see God sometimes. And sometimes I see Him very clearly, and it's absolutely clear. So I fluctuate from 0 to 10, and that's a part of being a human. And then he said, "Yeah, that's so right." And then he spilt his whole life story, and then we went into a whole discussion. But I could see from that little interchange that we had that for him, faith was all or nothing. Either you're in or you're out. And if you're a bit wobbly about your faith, so then that's a weakness. And that's not the Jewish position. The Jewish position is faith is a discussion. It's an ongoing thing. It sometimes feels strong and sometimes feels weak. We don't always have it. It's not a constant. It's not always there. But the question is, why indeed is it that way? Because if God is indeed there, so then God should be the most obvious reality there is. How could there be a struggle for faith? How could we be not sure about our faith? How is it possible that we could even debate such a thing? If God is indeed the source of everything, so then He should be the most obvious reality there is. And the truth is, He is. And what we use, the term we use for faith, is actually a misunderstanding of what faith really is. You don't need faith for God's existence. That God exists is an obvious reality. For that, you don't need faith. Faith is for something else, as we'll see. Source number 2 is the Rambam, Maimonides, the great 12th century philosopher, rabbi, physician, and great scholar. He wrote a book of all the laws of the Torah from beginning to end, and he started with the foundations of the Torah. That's the very beginning of his book. And in that beginning of the book, he starts with the very beginning, the very first paragraph, with the following words: "The foundation of all foundations and the pillar of wisdom is to know that there is a primary being who brought into being all existence. All beings of the heavens, the earth, and what is between came into existence only from the truth of his being. If one were to imagine that he does not exist, no other being could possibly exist." Now, what's interesting about this paragraph is the verb he uses. This is talking about to know that there's a primary existence, which is God. To know. He doesn't say to believe, he said to know. The foundation of foundations and the pillar of wisdom is to know that there is a primary being. Belief and knowledge are two different things. Knowing something means it's just a fact that I can see, I can palpably know it as a reality. Belief is I don't have proof, I don't have evidence, but I sense that it is true on some other level. Maimonides here presents the existence of God as being something we must know. Not believe in, but know. And why? Because it is really obvious. If you observe the world, if you look at the universe, if you look around you, it is obvious that it has a creator. This is only if you're looking at it rationally and logically and dispassionately, without any bias, without any assumptions, without trying to reach any conclusions, but just observe the way the world is. To say that the world does not have an author, doesn't have a creator, is absurd. It makes no sense. How could such an incredibly complex universe that works so in such an exact way, how could that possibly not have an author, a creator who did it? How could it be an accident? It's not rational. Only if you have a bone to pick, if you have an agenda, then you could come up with an explanation why the world is an accident. But that's not rational. It's not logical. It's not a person thinking purely from a intellectual perspective. There must be a bias there. And this Maimonides says, and he bases it on the words of our sages, that observe creation. Just look at creation and you see God. You are seeing God. Both the beauty of creation, the awesomeness of creation, the vastness of it, and the way that it works together. And we can all think of examples of things about the universe that are just so incredible. Whichever area of science that you want to study, you'll come to the same conclusion. And this is where Judaism embraces science, because we say, if you study the world, you're going to come to the conclusion that God is there. You're going to be in awe of him. Because the position of our planet, for example, is such that exactly where Earth is, it is far enough from the sun to keep warm and light, but not too close to melt and to be overwhelmed. It's exactly the right distance from the sun. Okay, you can say that's a coincidence. It just happened to be that way. Well, yeah, maybe, but that's quite a coincidence. It wouldn't be far out. It doesn't have to go far this way to be too close, or far that way to be too far away. Here, this way to be too hot, this way to be too cold. It's just where it's supposed to be, the exact position. And so too for all of the various life forms that there are in the world. It's a system, an ecosystem that feeds off each other and works together in such a perfect way that each thing has its way of survival. It is an incredible thing. If you've ever studied the human body, the unbelievable complexity of the human body, it's overwhelming. And to say that it was accidental, it makes no sense. It's almost a silly thought. Now, of course, I'm very aware that what I'm saying, it would contradict many great scientists. There are very intelligent scientists who say that yes, the world came about as an accident, and life developed in a random process. But the fact that somebody is an academic or a very intelligent person doesn't necessarily mean that what they're saying makes sense. It simply doesn't. And so Rambam here is saying, this is something we can know. Like that's obvious. To know that there's a God, of course there is. Why would somebody deny it? Why would somebody deny that there's a God? Well, because there's a price to pay. By accepting there's a God, there's ramifications of that. That means that there's certain expectations of you, that there is a moral code that God presents that you have to follow, that there is a lifestyle that you may have to live up to. Not everyone wants that. And so we do have an inner bias, a tendency to try and deny that to give us freedom. Because ultimately, somebody's got to be the ultimate being in the universe. Either it's me or it's somebody else. We are naturally, innately feel that it's me. I'm the center of the universe. That's how we're born. To accept that there's somebody else as the center of the universe, that's not easy. That takes a step. And so it's understandable that there's a bias against such a thing and the ability to justify the non-existence of God. However, what Rambam here is saying, Maimonides is saying, is that to be rational is to know that God exists. That's just a fact. Observe the world and he is. The same is when you observe your life. Look at the things that have happened to you in your life. The things that are coincidences, serendipity, the things that just happen to happen. And if you look carefully, you see there is a design here. There's a pattern here. I was put in this place at this time, in that situation, to learn this particular lesson. That person I met, this person, the way this didn't work out, but that did work out. If you look at it and you observe it with open eyes, you see that there is a design here. There is something bigger going on, something greater than me. And that is something that humanity have always had a sense of. And yet, he says, if one were to imagine that he does not exist, in other words, it's possible to imagine he doesn't exist, but then how does everything else exist? Where does everything else come from? There's no logical, rational explanation for that. And no one's ever come up with that explanation. Where did the first thing come from? Whatever it came from, whatever the Big Bang, or whatever gases, or whatever you explain, where did the first thing come from? Who created that? So this is something that we can know. We don't need faith for this. This is not a leap of faith. This is rational thinking. Just thinking and observing with our mind.
Rabbi Moss,
Yeah.
can I just ask you something? Before I came here, I was just watching TV, we all know that little Aboriginal girl Sharon who was raped and mutilated and killed, and all that whole community. Now they wouldn't want to say there is a God because
We're going to save that question for in 2 weeks. We're doing about why tragedies happen and how do we explain bad things, and that's a important question and worthy of a class of its own.
good. Okay, thank you.
So there's something interesting about these two paragraphs here. Maimonides, this is remember the very beginning of his book. He sets down the foundation. The foundation is to know there's God. This is something we should know. We should work on knowing. We should develop our knowledge, our awareness of God by observing the world, our life, and seeing the finger of God in everything. But then he says, and if one were to imagine that he does not exist, no other being could possibly exist, which is a very strange way of talking about God not existing. Already in the second paragraph of his book, he's talking about, and if you think he doesn't exist, well, then nothing else exists. And we've already established that we know by observing the world that he exists, that he is the foundation of everything. Why is he all of a sudden speaking about God not existing? If you're to imagine he doesn't exist, then no other being could possibly exist. So there's a mystical reading of Maimonides' words that says that what Maimonides here is presenting is two modes of relating to God. There is knowing him in the first paragraph, that you know his existence, that we know. And then there is relating to God as he is beyond existing, where God does not exist. That is another way of relating to God. There's God as he exists, that we know. And then there's a level of God we can imagine, and that is his non-existence. And that's not atheism, that's faith. Faith is the level where God does not exist. How so? Existing is a human description. The idea of existing is a description of something in this world. God is beyond any description of anything in this world. So to say that God exists is really a borrowed term, because existing is a created entity. What do I mean by that? Many kids usually ask this question, and adults do too. Who created God? If everything in the world was created, so who created God? Right? Like in other words, taking that logic, I see a world, it must be created. It must be from somewhere. So where's it from? It's from God. We'll take the logic further. So then, where's God from? Who created God? So what's the answer to that? Who created God? The answer is God created creating. So the idea of creating or being created was created by God. A metaphor I once gave to a kid was that there was a guy who invented Lego. But he's not made out of Lego. He made Lego. Right? The inventor of Lego is not himself made out of Lego. He made Lego. So too, God is the inventor of inventing. He's the one who invented creating. He's the one who invented existence. So therefore, he's beyond all those definitions. He wasn't created, he created creating. He's above time. So there was no beginning and no end, because he created time itself. This is one of those mind-blowing thoughts that you can stay up at night thinking about, that time itself is a creation. The idea that there was, is, and will be, the passage of time, that's a created thing. That's a part of the created universe. It didn't exist before. Before didn't exist before. You can't even use the word before. So God cannot be described by any of the limitations of his creation, including even the word existing. God is beyond existing. So then what is he? Well, we have a sort of two ways of relating to him. There's God as he allows us to interact with him, and on that level, he uses what's called anthropomorphism, human terms to describe God. So God is happy, he's sad, he wants us to do something. He interacts with us like as if a human being would be. He interacts and he hears us and he responds to us and he speaks to us. All of those words are borrowed terms that are really human terms that we give God, because he wants to have an interaction, a relationship with us. But if you're talking about his essence, his self is completely beyond this universe, beyond any description, beyond existing even. And that level, that is totally beyond what we can possibly understand. And this is what Maimonides here is hinting at. There's two ways of relating to God. There's knowing him as the creator who created the world. Well, that's a description, a creator who is involved and interacts with the world. That's him as a being that we have a relationship with. And that we can know, that's obvious. Of course, the world was created by a creator. But God himself, as an essential being, is beyond existence. That's beyond anything that we can understand. That is beyond knowing. That level of God is what we have faith in. That's where faith comes. Faith comes where knowledge ends. What we can know is this far, and what's beyond our knowledge, we have faith in. The God that created the world, that we know. We know God created the world, it's obvious. But that God is beyond the world. He existed before the world existed, and even now is beyond this existence, because he's beyond even existing. That we can have faith in, we can't know, because that's beyond our limitation. The human mind can only know so much, and beyond that, we have faith. Faith is not something that's lower than intellect, it's higher than intellect. It's not denying your intelligence, it is going beyond, it's transcending your intelligence. And that is where faith is. We need to examine this and understand this a little bit better. And so one of the sources that is quoted by the great Jewish thinkers is from the book of Deuteronomy. It's number 3 on your page. This is from the Torah itself, from the 5th book of the Torah, where it says, "The Lord is God, in heaven above and on earth below, there is nothing else." Meaning, that not that there's God and no other God. There's nothing else. In Hebrew, en od. There's nothing else. There's just God. So the great Hasidic masters said that this is a very deep meditation, that we usually understand God as being a being who created the world. But that is only a small part and an insufficient description of God. God's essence is the being who is the only being. There is nothing else. The world is not, as we perceive it, a separate entity from him. It's just him. There is just him and nothing else. How do we get there? How is that possible? Well, it has to be that way because God doesn't change. And so before there was a creation, what was there? Just God. Now there is a creation. What's happened? Well, we're here now. So is God not here? No, he's also here. So has he changed? No, because God doesn't change. If you change, you're not God. If you change, you're finite. God's infinite. Infinite means you are what you are, and you're always that. You never change. So therefore, is he still here? Yes. Are we here? Well, are we? Are we here?
Yeah.
You are. Good. And me and all of us, we exist?
Yeah.
And God too?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, we all have God inside of us.
God inside of us. Okay. And what about outside of us?
Well, God is everything. He's giving sustenance to everything. Otherwise, I would cease.
Okay. Giving sustenance to everything, that's okay. But what about, do I exist? Is there something that's me and not him?
Well, it depends on what level you're looking at the world. Maybe. In like the physical world, yeah, we all exist.
We exist only as far as we can understand how we exist, as in Tzimtzum, where our concealment is only limited to what we experience at this very moment, because we are incapable of being exposed to anything closer to what.
So that means we think we exist,
Yes.
but we don't really.
Well,
No, we
In that-
physically exist. In this physical world, we exist.
So the physical world exists,
In the spiritual world.
Yeah, you're right.
and the spiritual world.
We exist.
So we do exist.
But we carry like the essence of God, right? Like the essence of God is in everything,
Right.
including us. But
Right.
we do exist
Right.
with God's essence and
God wants us. God wants
These
us
are.
to exist, though. He created us for a purpose. If we didn't have a purpose to make a dwelling place for God, then we wouldn't exist.
Right.
God wants us to exist in order to create that dwelling place for Him. He doesn't need it, but He wants it.
Okay. So we do exist. And God is everywhere. So
we
what?
exist because we think.
But we think we exist, or
No, we think, therefore we exist.
our awareness, our consciousness. But then, is that in place of God? Is there somewhere where God ends and I begin? That's problematic. Right? To say God ends somewhere and I begin, that's making God limited. Then God is unlimited. He's infinite. So there can't be a place where He is not. So is there a place that I am? This is a big problem. This is a huge theological conundrum that has baffled the great thinkers forever. Because as long as we physicalize God, as long as we make Him into a person, like an old man on a cloud who created the world, it's fine. He's over there, He created the world is here, there's no issue, there's no problem. But that depiction of God is inaccurate. That's a person. God is an infinite being that is beyond any description, no limitation, and therefore we have a problem. Our existence is a problem. Because if you say we don't exist, then there's no problem. We don't. There's just God, and we do not exist. There's no problem. The problem is who said that, and who's having this conversation, and what's the point if we don't exist? Even if you say that we are mirages, we don't really exist. We think we exist, but we don't really exist. So then, okay, you've solved the problem of God's existence. God exists, we don't. We just have a false existence, a false sense of existence. So we're a mirage. Okay, that's true. But then again, you've rendered us useless. We're not real beings. But if you say that we are real, that we do exist, well, you've made a problem with God then, because we are taking up some space, some existence that He's not there. That doesn't make sense. That can't be either. So, if you've noticed, what we've just done is we've switched the entire discussion around from God's existence to our existence. People are usually struggling, does God exist? He does, He doesn't exist. Is there a God? God's existence is a given. He's reality. That's what about our existence? That's the conundrum. How do we exist? His existence is the obvious one. Our existence is the one that needs explanation. And so, the way the Kabbalists dealt with this question was with the concept you mentioned of tzimtzum, of the contraction of the divine light, which is much more subtle than it seems. That ultimately, God, for whatever reason, wanted us to exist. He wants to give us a presence. He wants us to exist. The Kabbalists say the reason why is because He wanted finiteness to exist and then enter into a relationship with infinity. He wanted that His infinite self should experience what it is to connect with another, with something outside of Him, someone outside of Him, to have a relationship. This is what He ultimately wanted. And the only way you can have a relationship is with a being who is, number one, not you, and number two, is autonomous, has free choice. You can't have a relationship with an extension of yourself. That's not a relationship. That's just you. You can have an imaginary friend, but it's not a real relationship. That imaginary friend is you. You decide what the imaginary friend says and wants. That's not a true relationship. It can be fun sometimes, but it can't be really called a true relationship. An imaginary friend is you. You're making them up. So to have a relationship, it has to be with a real being who's outside of you, who's not you. And that real being has to be also an autonomous being that has free choice. You can have a relationship with a puppet or with a painting on the wall, but that's not a real relationship because that being is not an entity with free choice. There's nothing unpredictable about them. There's nothing that's outside of you that they are contributing. And so when God decided he wants a relationship, what he was essentially saying is he wants to create a being that is not him, that is separate from him, and that has free choice. And that is what the creation of the universe was, creating the arena where there can be separateness, an entity that is separate from him. But he's got a problem. His problem is he's infinite. So where are you going to put this other being? Where's this other being going to go? If you're infinite, you fill all of existence. So where's that other being possibly going to go? There's nowhere to put it. And this doesn't just mean in a physical sense, but even in an existential sense, to exist outside of God, there is no existence outside of God. So what he had to create was a sense of disconnect, a sense of separateness that feels completely separate and allows this other being to have autonomy, to have distinctness, separateness from him. And that is what the Kabbalists called the tzimtzum, the contraction, the hiding away of God's presence, creating a space, a conceptual space where the other can exist. But the catch is that space, that emptiness is also him. That's also God. God is also doing that. That space that he's creating is him creating. There is God's ability to reveal, and there's God's ability to conceal. There's his ability to be present, and there's his ability to seem absent. It's still him. It's his absence. His absence is still him. He's not really not there. He's just hiding away his revealed self, and he's revealing his absent self. And maybe I can go on silent. And so the way that he solved this conundrum is by creating the possibility of an other, and that other is just experiencing God's concealment, which is still him. Let's have a look at the words of Tanya. Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, who he always tried to put these very esoteric ideas into readable, understandable words. The challenge that he took upon himself was to try and take mystical ideas and make them understandable to the human mind. So he says the following: the divine life force conceals itself in the body of the created being. It appears as though the body of the created being has independent existence and is not merely an expression of the life force and spirituality as the light from the sun, but an autonomous entity. So he uses the word conceal, which is the tzimtzum. This is the contraction, this concealment of the divine light. The divine light is concealed in the physical body of creation, our body or the universe. Now, it's not, in its experience, it is not just an expression of the life force, like the light from the sun. When you look at the sun shines light. We down here on Earth, we don't have the sun here. We have the sunlight down here. When it's warm outside and it's light outside, it's light from the sun. It's not the sun. We don't have the sun here. The sun's up there, but it's shining its light to us. However, that light is inextricably joined to its source, the sun. You can't separate the two. There's the sun and the light of the sun. They're two different things, but the light of the sun does not exist independently from the sun. It is the light of the sun. If the sun's gone, the light's gone. That's not the way we feel. Our body, our physical existence, doesn't feel that we're just an extension of the divine light. We feel separate. We exist. We are. Even though the divine light is hidden, we exist. So we're not like the light from the sun. We feel autonomy, freedom, separateness. And that is because God's light is concealed, not revealed. The sun reveals its light. God is hiding his light. And that's how he created the world, by hiding his light. And that allowed us to exist. But that's how we feel. We feel a separateness from God. But that's actually not the truth. Because although in reality, the second paragraph says there, in reality, it has no independent existence, meaning the physical world has no independent existence, and is only like the light from the sun. We really are like the light from the sun. Nevertheless, this concealment is the very restraining power of the Holy One, blessed be He, who is omnipotent, to condense the life force and spirituality and to conceal it, so that the body of the created being shall not become nullified. These are very important words. The sun shines its light, and that light is an extension of the sun. If you hide away the sun, if you block the sun, the light doesn't come through. So when the sun is shining through the window, we get the light and the warmth. If we close the shades, so then the sun does not shine into our room because we block the light of the sun. When it comes to God, however, it's not there's the light of God and then there's something blocking him, the shades. They're both him. There's his light and there's his ability to hide his light, to block his light. But it's also him. The concealment is also him. It's his power to conceal. And so to create the physical world, what did he do? He blocked his light from shining. It shouldn't be revealed. He made his light concealed. But that concealment is also him. This is the omnipotent power of God. Because God is all-powerful, he can create by hiding, just like he can create by revealing. We don't have this power. Human beings are not omnipotent. We're not all-powerful. We're limited beings, right? So I can try to explain to you these ideas by talking. If I stop talking, it's not going to further explain the idea. By revealing, I'm talking. If I stop talking, I'm not revealing anymore. That's because only while I'm talking, there's information coming out. When I stop talking, there's no information coming out. So I could stop here, stop right here, and what I've said, I've said, and the rest I haven't said. God is omnipotent. He's saying, he's revealing, he's creating, he's concealing, he's stopping to talk is also a form of revelation. It's also a form of creation. It's also him. And so therefore, what we are looking at when we look at the universe, we are looking at the divine power of concealment. This is God's hiddenness, which is equally him as God's revelation. Unlike the sun, that there's the sun shining or the blinds stop the sun. With God, it's all him. It's his power to reveal, his power to conceal. We are viewing, what we're experiencing in the universe is the concealed light of God, which is also him. That's what it means in the verse, the Lord is God in heaven and above. The verse in number 3 there. The Lord is God. The two names of God refer to, the Lord is God's revealed power, Yud, Hey, and Vav and Hey. And then there's Elohim, God's power to conceal. There's his power to express, and there's his power to hide. It's all him. And so who are we? What are we? What is this physical world? God's power to conceal. Why did he do this? Why did he make a world where he's concealed? In that last line he says, so that the body of the created being shall not become nullified. If God would just be revealed and not concealed, we would be nullified. We would lose our existence. We're finite beings, remember? Finite entities in an infinite light are lost. If infinity is revealed, finiteness is lost. If you drop one coin into an infinite amount of coins, it's gone. Because infinity has no number, has no individuality. It's endless. If Hashem's light, if God's light, infinite light would shine, we would not exist. We can only exist if his infinite light is concealed and expresses his finiteness, which is his concealment. And so, this is why God hid his infinite light, concealed his infinite light, and only expressed in this world his concealed finiteness, and that is us. Putting it in other words, if his infinite light would be revealed, you couldn't deny him. That wouldn't be possible. It wouldn't be possible to question God's existence because it's just right in front of us. Now, we said before, the universe, you look at the universe, and he is deniable in the universe. You could plausibly deny his existence in the universe. You can come up with a theory that the universe came by accident, that life came about as a random process. You can give a plausible description to the world that denies God. And that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted us to be able to deny him, because otherwise we don't have free choice. If we can't deny his existence, we don't have free choice. Only by creating a world where he is hidden, and that hiddenness means that you could say, well, he's not there. That means that if you say he is there, it's not because you were forced to say that, it's because you chose to say that. You found him, you discovered him, you with your own free choice, embraced his existence. Yeah.
Why is God hate?
So again, because we need to use human terminology to describe God, we don't have a better word. So we usually describe God in the masculine. There are other times we do describe God in the feminine as well. There are masculine and feminine elements to God's expression in the world. If we were describing beyondness, like the self of God, we wouldn't say he or she, but we don't have a better word. To say it depersonalizes it and makes it into some object. There's no word for it. So we shouldn't get stuck in the words, but sometimes it's deliberate. There are masculine elements. The male and female element of creation is a reflection of the divine masculine and feminine energies of the world. Like for example, the Shabbos queen. That we describe God as being a Shabbos queen, the divine feminine coming into the world on Shabbos. Whereas the 6 days of the week are the divine masculine. And that's because masculine energy is an aggressive energy that tries to change the world, which is weekday. Feminine energy is a nurturing energy that appreciates the inner reality as the world is, which is the Shabbos energy. And so on Shabbos, it's feminine, and during the week, it's masculine. But understanding that God is neither. He created that dichotomy. And the dichotomy came about because God is creating a world that exists separate from him and wants a relationship, so there has to be the two. Yeah.
So we can understand the purpose then of our existence to eventually reveal the godliness in the world, and that I guess is the Mashiach, the Messiah. When the Messiah comes, the world will be, filled with peace and harmony, godliness will be revealed, that the temple will be built. So then, what will our purpose be once Mashiach comes and then everything?
That's class number 5. We're going to deal with that, with the ultimate purpose of existence in class number 5. We're going to get there.
Okay, we'll get there. Even when Mashiach comes, we'll get there, because you're going to say the goal is, and you'll explain all the ultimate purpose of existence to bring the Messiah. But do the scholars unpack what will be once the Messiah is actually here?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. But not necessarily that we could understand that, because we're in the now reality, and that's a then reality. So however we're thinking now, that is a totally different way of thinking. But yeah, we will cover that, please God.
And last thing,
Mm,
sorry. Ultimately, when we talk about this idea that Hashem is concealed, that would be the part that the Rambam's referring to of the level of faith, not the knowing. It's the faith level.
So going back, yes, that the God that we usually talk about as the creator of the universe, who is in control of everything that is happening and is watching over everything that happens and is responding to us, that is the God that we can know. That is God as he conceals himself, contracts himself, and takes on a persona, as it were. But there is the divine essence, which is beyond that, beyond those descriptions. That is the divine self. And we can connect to that level as well. And that is through faith. That faith is in that level of God. So the God that created the world, that we can know. We can know God created the world. That's obvious. And that we need to know, and we need to contemplate and observe and arouse a feeling towards the God that created us and sustains us. But then there's going beyond that, there's transcending even that to the essence of God that is beyond this world. On that level, that's what Maimonides is saying in the second paragraph. In one word, to imagine that he does not exist. Go beyond existence. And that you can do with imagination, not with knowledge. You can't know it, but you can imagine it, you can sense it, and with that, you can reach the level where nothing else exists. Only God exists. And sometimes we have to go there, because the world of existence is a world of struggle. It's not an easy place. Sometimes we need to go into the world where God is infinite, God is all-powerful, and nothing is impossible. There's a finite world where not everything's possible. And then there's an infinite world where anything is possible. And that's where faith is. Faith is that there's just God and nothing else. So on the plane where we're existing, and just on a very practical level, on the plane where we exist, there is good and evil. There are things that are good, there are things that are not good. There are things that we want, things that we don't want. There are things that make us happy, things that make us sad. There are things that support us and things that challenge us. That's the multiplicity of the world that we live in. And we believe that God is behind everything, and everything is ultimately for the good, but it might not be good. That's on that plane. Then there's a higher plane where there's just God and nothing else. Nothing else exists. Nothing exists outside of him. There's not duality. There's not this and that. There's not two sides. There's just the oneness of God. And on that plane, there's total divine oneness, and anything is possible, and nothing can block it. Nothing get in the way. That you have to have faith. That we can't see, that we can't understand, that we can't comprehend, we can't relate to, that we just have to have faith in. And so that means that we as human beings are living in these two planes. We're living on the one hand in the human reality down here, which is the world of struggle, and we also have a connection to the divine reality that is beyond here. But the thing is, when you really reach that level, you become nullified. If we would truly understand the divine oneness that there's only God and nothing else, well, then I don't exist on that level. I just am subsumed in his existence. And that's not what he wants. He wants me to exist down here in the world of struggle, where I'm not sure, and I have doubts, and I fluctuate and have ups and downs, because I'm a human being in a disconnected reality. That's where he wants us to live. He wants us to live down here in this world of struggle. And so, as tempting as it would be to just disappear into God's oneness and be lost in him, but what he wants is for us to be down here in the world where we feel separate, and sometimes we feel lost and sometimes we feel sad, and sometimes we feel disconnected and confused. And we have to make decisions and choices and try and make a good life and try and do the right thing. That's where he wants us, in that place that is not completely aligned with his oneness, in the world of disunity. Because when we're down here and we choose him, that's when we have a relationship, a connection to him. We're bringing him into this world. So that's the very profound teaching here that the Tanya is trying to convey, is that God's existence is the only existence. That's all there is. But if we would actually experience that, we would cease to exist. Our existence is dependent on our unawareness of his oneness, of his total existence. That we don't know this. We imagine it, but we don't know it. With your question about when Mashiach comes, it says that in the future we will know it, and we'll lose our free choice. In the future we'll experience God's essence, and then we won't have free choice anymore. Because once you're connected to essence, you're not separate from him. There's no two ways, there's no free choice, there's no struggle, that's gone. For now, we're in the world of struggle. And that's what it means, the one who struggles with God. Israel is the one who struggles with God, with God's existence, with God's essence. Not that he exists or doesn't exist. That's not a struggle. We know God. We know he exists. That's an obvious fact. The struggle is only he exists. Nothing else exists. That's a struggle. That you need faith with. That's not something that comes so easily, comes so naturally. This idea was very beautifully expressed by the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, in a discourse that he said in 1981. We spoke about where Jewish faith comes from. And he says that Jews believe in God with simple faith, with no need for evidence. And that is for two reasons. Number one, our soul sees God. The part of our souls that transcends the body can see the divine. This in turn impacts the part of our soul that inhabits the body to have faith. What's he saying? Let's analyze this. Where is our faith? Our faith in God's essence, our connection to God, where is that? We said that knowing God, that God created the world. That God exists, that we know. But having faith in God's essence, in his self that is beyond this world, how do we have that? Where do we have that? So he says, we have it because our soul sees it. Faith is not something that we feel in our heart. Faith is not something that we know with our brain. Faith is something we see with our soul. That our soul sees God. Because there's a part of our soul that is limited within our body, but there is a part of our soul that is beyond our body. And that part of the soul is in constant contact with God, sees God. We usually think of our soul as being something deep within us, deep inside of us. And that's true, but that's only a part of the soul. That's the lower part of the soul. The essence of the soul is beyond the body, is higher than the body, never came down into the physical world. The soul is described by the Kabbalists more as being like a ray of light, like we said of the rays of the sun, that there is the source of our soul in the spiritual realm that shines down into the body. There's a ray of the soul that's enlivening my body, but the essence of my soul is way beyond my body. It's not contained in my body. And therefore, the part of the soul that's in my body is limited to the faculties of my body. What my mind can understand, what my heart can feel, that's all the soul can experience. But the part of my soul that is beyond my body is privy to wider realities. The realities beyond the body and beyond the physical. And that part of the soul is constantly looking at God, sees God, doesn't need a proof, doesn't need evidence, sees God. It's just the reality. It's sort of like, to get an inkling of what this means, it's like when we're sleeping and we're dreaming. That when we dream, our soul leaves our body, we enter into that higher realm where we're not using our conscious brain anymore to think, but we're seeing realities that are beyond. And sometimes that dreaming can be quite real. So in a way, our soul is always in that state that is beyond the body and can see realities beyond the physical and beyond the limitations. It always sees that. But I'm standing here thinking with my conscious mind, and what my soul, my subconscious or superconscious soul is experiencing, I don't see that because I'm seeing the physical. However, I don't see it maybe with my eyes, but what my soul is experiencing, it drips down into my mind as well. And so therefore I have conviction, I have faith, because my soul sees. Even though my brain doesn't see it, my soul sees it. And so that's what he means here, that our soul sees God. The part of our souls that transcends the body can see the divine. This in turn impacts the part of our soul that inhabits the body to have faith. So I can walk around with faith. Why? Because my heart feels things, my brain understands things, but my soul connects to things that are beyond what my brain and my heart can experience. It's another faculty I have, my soul. And a part of my soul is inside of me and part of it is beyond me, but they're ultimately connected. So what my soul up there sees, my soul down here can feel and experience as well. That's one explanation of where faith comes from. But he has a second deeper one. And that is, our soul is one with God. Not that our soul sees God. That's two separate entities. Our soul is one with God. The essence of our soul is divine. And the bond is an expression of our deeper self. That because my soul is essentially part of the divine, it is one with God. So therefore, my awareness of God is not something separate from me, like I'm aware of something outside of me, but my awareness of self is my awareness of God. Because the essence of my soul is one with God. So, what the Rabbi here explains is we've really turned everything upside down. That we started with the idea that faith is something that we struggle with because we're not sure, is God really there? Is he not there? Is this all true? Or maybe it's not true. And we said, well, actually, it's the other way around. The real conundrum is about our existence, whether we exist or not. God's existence is the most obvious existence in the world. Our existence is the question. And the only reason that God is deniable in this world, the only reason we could even question it, is because God created us in such a way that we should feel separate and have free choice. That was the whole plan. That's what he wanted. He wanted us to be free entities who can choose him. Otherwise, we're puppets, and our life is meaningless. So he had to be concealed, but that concealment is him. It's him concealing. And so what we're looking at when we look at the world is the divine light as it is concealed, as it is hidden. This is what the world is. And how do we know this? Where do we have this from? How do we have this connection? Because our soul sees this all the time. Faith is not something that you need to be convinced of. It's not that somebody should come with 10 arguments to prove why God must exist. We don't need that. Our soul sees, our soul knows. The way Rabbi Shnei Zalman, the Alter Rebbe, put it once is, every child has faith, naturally. They don't need convincing. They don't need proofs. It just makes total sense to them because it's real. It's just real. It's as we get older and more sophisticated in our thinking, we become more complicated, we put layers over our soul, and so then we start to introduce that plausible deniability of God. But that has to be introduced. A child does not need any proofs. It's just an obvious fact. It makes total sense. Even though there's all these contradictions and all these things and we have no description of God, it's fine. For a child, it's fine because God is there. He's right there. So,
Everyone's getting excited with all the Torah learning.
Switched off too.
So where does this leave us? This leaves us with the name Israel. Israel means the one who struggles with God. What is the struggle? The struggle is that I'm living down here in this world. And down here in this world, there are distractions. And there's pain and suffering. And there are temptations this way and that. And there's the concealment of God, where God is hidden. And I, being a free being, can misinterpret that concealment as being absence. God's not just hiding, he's not there. It seems like he's not there. And so, of course, if God wanted, he could have created me in such a way where I see him not with the essence of my soul up there, I see him with my eyes. I see God right in front of me. And God's reality is an obvious one, not from extrapolating that the world was created and so there must be a creator, but I could see God himself. He could have created me that way. But if he did, I'd just be an extension of him. I'd be a puppet. I wouldn't have freedom. He created me in such a way where I don't see him with my physical eyes. And I see a world where you could deny him and deny his existence, and it could make sense to deny him. That way, if I choose to connect with him, it's coming from me. And every layer of faith that I gain, there'll be a layer of challenge to challenge that faith and to make it a bit harder, so I have to choose him again. Because that way the relationship is real. It is a choice, it's coming from me. And this is why our lives are always going to be full of various different challenges and difficulties and concealments and darknesses and things that we have to constantly overcome. It's not that we're being punished, it's that we're being beckoned to choose again, to find the light inside of that darkness, to reveal the hidden light of God in that place. This is the Israel, the struggle, the one that struggles with God, constantly struggling. And so sometimes faith will come easy, and sometimes it'll be really hard. Sometimes it comes naturally, and sometimes it is an uphill battle. But that's exactly what God wants.
Rabbi Moss,
And-
did you actually say what the meaning of Israel is? Did I miss that?
Yeah, the one who struggles with God, one who wrestles with God. Yeah. So this idea of the struggle is beautifully expressed by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, somebody who he very much wrote a lot about this struggle. And so in his great work, Likutei Moharan, he says the following, that no matter what a person is lacking in worshiping God, even if he is totally and absolutely distant from God's service, he should speak about it and ask it of God. Meaning, if you're struggling to connect to God, if you're not sure and feeling very far and distant, talk to God about it. Discuss it with him. Speak about that with him. Your lack of faith, talk to God about it. Speak to him. Even if occasionally a person's words are sealed and he cannot open his mouth to say anything at all to God, I can't possibly talk to God. I have no faith, no connection, no feeling. What I'm going through, it's not possible for me to turn to God. This itself is nonetheless very good. That is, his readiness and his presence before God and his yearning and longing to speak despite his inability to do so, this in itself is also very good. Feeling that sense of struggle, I can't possibly talk to God, that itself is good. When somebody feels a little bit angry at God, distant from God, questioning, that itself is a yearning to connect. It's not bad. It's good. It's a good thing. Don't run away from it. Don't deny it. Embrace that sense of anger, of disappointment, of distance, of sadness, whatever it is. That itself is a relationship. This is what we're here. We're here to be real people. God created us to be real and to have a real relationship with him. Moreover, it is possible to make a conversation and prayer out of this itself. Make a prayer out of your disconnection with God. A person should cry out and plead to God about this very thing, that he has become so distant and he's unable even to speak. I can't talk to you, God, which is talking to God. I don't feel you. I don't feel your connection. I don't know if you're there. That's also talking. He should beg God for compassion and grace, that he take pity on him and open his mouth so that he will be able to express himself before him. So you can even pray for the ability to pray. This is the real struggle with God. This is what it means to be Israel, to struggle with God. And so if somebody feels that they lack faith and they're not sure if they believe, well, we don't believe them. Because inside your soul believes. Faith is something that you have. It's not something you need to get. It's something that you have. Your soul sees God. Your soul is God. It's one with God. God's existence is the only true existence. He's beyond existence. He's all there is. That's what we believe. We don't believe in not believing. Not believing is just being a part of the struggles of this world. That this world presents that darkness. And that darkness is not something to deny or to run away from. It's to embrace the darkness. Yes, we're in the world of darkness. We're in the world of disconnect. And that itself is what God wants. And through that you can connect. Through your lack of faith, your disbelief, can be the source of your prayer. To pray to God, to connect to Him. This is what it means to struggle. To struggle with God. And that is our name, the name Israel. Okay.